Okay, let's be real for a second. If you've ever stood at the front of a classroom, you know the deep, baffling frustration of watching your students make decisions that are just obviously not in their own best interest, right? I mean, you set up a perfectly logical reward system, you clearly outline the punishments, and yet they still choose to mess around instead of studying, or they treat a multiple choice test like it's a lottery ticket. Traditional teaching often assumes kids are these little logical computers, but today we're going to look at the ultimate solution for understanding your predictably irrational students. Welcome to this explainer. We are diving into the fascinating world of behavioral economics in the classroom.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the predictably irrational student. Then, how students really think. Moving into guiding without forcing, the science of rewards, designing better choices, and finally, leveling up the classroom. Let's just jump right in.
Section 1. The predictably irrational student. Seriously, why is it that, even with the absolute best information right in front of them, students will still actively sabotage their own success?
Well, let's dive into this, because this captures the ultimate paradigm shift in education. The old economics view basically assumed that humans, and by extension your students, always make rational decisions. We kind of thought that if you just give them more information, they'll magically make better choices. We believed rewards and punishments were literally the only steering wheels we had. But behavioral economics? It proves that humans are predictably irrational. Your students aren't logical computers, they are emotional humans. They're heavily influenced by their habits, by peer pressure, and critically, by the specific context in which you present a choice. It turns out, how you present the information matters far more than the information itself.
Section 2. How students really think. We're going to look at the core principles here. What's the actual engine driving all these behaviors? The first major concept is bounded rationality. You know when a student just picks an answer totally at random? They aren't necessarily being intentionally stubborn or lazy. They're actually suffering from cognitive overload. Students simply cannot think through every single choice perfectly, so their brains rely on mental shortcuts. If you give a student 10 different homework options, you'll overwhelm them, and they might just pick the easiest one just to be done with it. But if you curate that down to 2 or 3 really solid options, they can actually engage their critical thinking and choose wisely. Next up, we have the status quo bias. Humans inherently prefer the current situation because change feels physically and mentally uncomfortable. We just don't like it. This perfectly explains why your students will rigidly follow a classroom routine you set in week 1, even months later, without you ever having to tell them to do it again. If you set the standard early, the status quo bias does the heavy lifting for the rest of the year. And then there's social proof. Now, we usually think of peer pressure as a purely negative force in schools, but it's really not. Social proof just means people naturally copy what others around them are doing, especially when they aren't totally sure what to do themselves. So if you can get the majority of the class to raise their hands, those hesitant, quieter students are naturally nudged to participate too, simply because they want to match the room.
Section 3. Guiding without forcing. So how do we actually use these principles to guide choices seamlessly without ever resorting to force?
That brings us to nudge theory, introduced by Nobel Prize winner Richard Thaler. A nudge is a small, gentle change in the environment that guides students toward a better choice. The absolutely crucial point here is that a nudge never removes a choice. It doesn't ban anything at all. It simply makes the good choice easier or more visible than the bad choice. The student is always totally free to choose differently, but we're basically stacking the deck in favor of their success.
To build a good nudge, we use the EAST framework, 4 superlogical steps: easy, attractive, social, and timely. First, easy. Make the desired behavior require the least amount of effort possible, like displaying homework instructions on the board before they even sit down. Second, attractive. Put the star chart where it's literally the very first thing they see when they walk in. Third, social. Point out how many students are doing the right thing. And finally, timely. Give feedback instantly. Stamp a notebook right when you see good work, rather than waiting for Friday afternoon.
Section 4. The science of rewards. Let's look at how to make good behavior consistently engaging.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the incredible difference between predictable and unpredictable rewards. We often give rewards on a fixed ratio, like say a star for every 5 homework assignments. That yields medium-strength motivation. But notice the variable ratio row, where rewards are given after a random, unpredictable number of positive behaviors. This is the absolute most powerful way to maintain high effort across your class. It's exactly the same psychology that makes video games and lucky draws so addictive. Using occasional surprise praise keeps students constantly engaged because they literally never know when the next reward is coming.
Actually, I need to pause here for a second and offer a very real warning. We have to talk about the over-justification effect.
If you constantly reward students with external prizes, like stickers, for something they already naturally enjoy doing, like reading a book, you can accidentally kill their intrinsic motivation. It's wild, but once the stickers stop, their natural love for the activity might completely vanish. So the rule of thumb is, we use external rewards to build a new habit, and then we gradually fade those rewards out over time.
Section 5. Designing better choices. Let's uncover the hidden power of how we frame situations in the classroom.
Okay, this is one of the most famous findings in all of behavioral economics: loss aversion. Psychologists Kahneman and Tversky proved that the pain of losing something hurts about twice as much as the joy of gaining that exact same thing. Just let that sink in for a second. The fear of losing something is scientifically a much stronger motivator than the hope of gaining it.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we can use loss aversion practically. Look at the difference in framing here. If you say, earn 10 stars this week, you get average motivation. But if you simply change your words and say, you already have 10 stars, don't lose them, you instantly trigger loss aversion. It is the exact same reward, but framing it around a potential loss yields massive behavioral improvements. And the best part? It costs you absolutely nothing to implement.
Let's rapid fire through some other choice architecture strategies you can design into your room. First, default options. This just means making the best behavior automatic. Like if an online portal auto-saves homework, a student has to actively opt out to not submit it. Next, simplification. Fewer choices literally lead to better focus. Then there's salience, which is making important things stand out visually. Think writing today's learning goal in massive yellow text. And finally, implementation intentions. This means having students write out a simple if-then plan, like, if I finish early, then I will read Chapter 3.
Section 6. Leveling up the classroom. Let's combine all these theories into action with some advanced, ready-to-use strategies.
First, we've got to master social norms. So, there are descriptive norms, what people actually do, like 28 out of 30 students submitted on time. There are injunctive norms, what we approve of, like, in our class, we respect ideas. And personal norms, what an individual deeply believes. The absolute golden rule here? Always praise the majority publicly to normalize good behavior. Do not stand at the front of the room and complain that most of you forgot your homework. If you do that, you accidentally normalize forgetting. You're basically telling the class that forgetting is the standard.
This understanding of progress perfectly translates into gamification. Games use behavioral economics flawlessly, right? You can use point systems, levels, and badges to give instant feedback, but pay really close attention to progress bars. When you use a visual bar showing how close a class is to a goal, it triggers what's called the endowed progress effect. Basically, the closer kids get to the finish line, the harder they will work to cross it. Frame your class tasks as quests, provide immediate feedback, and watch them light up just like they do for a video game. To ground all of this psychology in reality, here are 3 concrete strategies you can use tomorrow morning. Number 1, the preloaded star chart. Give every student 10 stars on Monday and deduct them for rule breaks. Loss aversion will make them protect those stars fiercely. Number 2, the streak board. Publicly track homework or punctuality streaks. Just like those language apps we all use, students become incredibly motivated simply because they don't want to break their streak. And number 3, surprise reward Friday. Tap into that variable ratio reinforcement we talked about earlier. A random, completely unpredictable treat will keep classroom engagement sky high all week long.
We've moved from the frustration of unpredictable, irrational students to a complete, powerful behavioral toolkit. By making small, thoughtful nudges in how we present choices, how we frame feedback, and how we schedule rewards, we can dramatically improve our educational environments. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to take away. Now that you know the invisible forces guiding your students' decisions, how will you architect your classroom tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy teaching.